Okay, so please give a very warm welcome to Kurzke from Google.
Hey guys. So, my name is Christian. Don't even try my last name. If you want to get a hold of me, the best is actually follow me on my Google Plus page. That's usually the best way we interact around here. Or you can jot down my email address. I'll be around most of the weekend. So if you see me, I'm more than happy to talk with you and give you ideas, give you any answer any of your questions. I think we've already covered this before, but I just again want to say really big thank you to the Android developers meetup group here. I think David and Nelson, they have done a really awesome job getting everything together here, and the countless volunteers. I mean, it starts from all the people who help with the registration here to people like security guys and everyone, and all the guys in our team. I do realize you all are super excited, and I'm like sort of the big car right in front of you here, so I'm between you and getting started. So I'm trying to make it pretty fun and entertaining and relatively short. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of an idea and a little bit of an overview of what you can do with Google TV. And maybe, I know David said you already have submitted 50 ideas. That is awesome. Maybe I can inspire 2 or 3 more ideas. As Paul said earlier, this is a really tough job here. You want to make sure you have people on your team. You can do it by yourself, but really, like everything else in life, it's more fun and it's a lot more entertaining, and you learn a lot more when you team up with other people. And I really encourage you also. I've seen earlier when we had food here, some people started mingling, started talking. I think it's really great. We will have a couple opportunities, or actually, I mean, the next 2 days, you guys have a lot of chances to talk with other people here. I think the value of this event, I mean, okay, there is a $2,000 or $3,000 cash prize, but really the biggest value of this event is if you make more friends in this community here. You guys are all really cool Android developers. You are interested in cutting edge stuff. Meet somebody that you don't know yet. So my challenge for all of you is by the end of the weekend on Sunday, I want all of you to make at least one more new friend here. So don't be shy, meet people. Everybody here is happy to, find new cool people. And then on Sunday, you can chill out. So I hope you all filed for vacation on Monday, because it's going to be a long weekend. So what we're going to talk about is basically America's biggest hobby. That is what most people do who don't actually write code. There is those people who actually right now sit at home and watch television. There's a lot of them. So let's see what we can do for them. So this is just some of the usual stats, but just to again drive home, you all are probably Android developers, or at least you have thought about writing code for cell phones. Cell phones are really awesome, but keep in mind people watch a lot more TV than they talk on their cell phones. In the US, it's pretty sad to say, people spend about 5 hours every day watching television, or at least the TV is on. 22% of households already have an HD TV. Most of them have some form of integrated apps. If you have tried to develop for any of those integrated smart TVs and stuff, you'll know the limitations. It's still very early days. It's not that easy to write apps for those. We are trying to change that. We're trying to turn it really into an open platform. And we expect that by 2015, 500 million people will have web-enabled TVs. So the opportunities, what can you do as developers? You can actually be the center of the living room. Remember, that's where the people spend 5 hours of their life every day. You can enhance the way they watch television. You can maybe write an app that makes their TV more entertaining, more engaging. What I actually personally think is a lot more interesting is the other 19 hours that they don't watch television. Think about, there's still people right now buying little photo frames that they put right next to the television. It doesn't make any sense. You have a 60-inch TV. Why do you buy a 3-inch photo frame, put it right next to it? Think about how the TV is usually the center of a living room. If your app runs on that thing for 19 hours a day, that's pretty compelling. Keep in mind who you're actually developing for. You all know this guy. I don't claim this is what your living room looks like, but I know this guy, and this guy has just set up his Linux PC, hooked it up to the PC, to his television. He has probably 3 or 4 game consoles, has a bunch of other toys, has probably I don't know, 15 terabyte or wherever we are hard drive with all kinds of movies that they of course bought in the iTunes store. Those guys are out there, and I get a lot of questions where people are like, oh my god, you know, why do I need a Google TV? I already have a Linux PC and it works and blah. I'm like, awesome, here, have a cookie. You really want to develop for those people. So keep in mind, when you look around the room, as I said, those are all great people, make a lot of more friends tonight. None of those people here will buy your application. Develop for the people who stand in Starbucks in the line and they pay $4 for a cappuccino. They will buy your app. And I'm not joking. I mean, you want to really target people who have, you know, who have interest in having interesting apps on their TV. On the other hand, keep in mind, your actual users will actually be those guys. My biggest test for Google TV is when my in-laws come over and I just give them the remote control and I say, "Yo, here, have a good time, I just got a new software update." It's really, one of the differences between a cell phone and a TV is you go out, you make a conscious choice, you are an early adopter, you buy the latest and greatest iPhone 4, 5, 6, wherever we are those days, or Android device, whatever. You spend a lot of money on this thing, you'll figure out how to work that thing. You'll figure out how to use it. TVs, usually 1 or 2 people in the household are tech savvy. The rest of the people have no freaking clue what that thing is. And if it gets on their nerves, they're really annoyed because they just want to watch TV right now. And they don't care about smart TV or anything. So if you develop an app, have a use case that makes it really super simple, easy for people to use your app. The way you interact with a TV is also different from a phone. Obviously, you have no touch screen. I also have a lot of people at conferences who are always disappointed there is no touch screen. And I'm like, have you thought this through? You're sitting in your living room, you're getting off your couch, and you're swiping a carousel on your screen. Not a good idea. So when you design your app, make sure it's useful. It's basically optimized for using it with what we call a D-pad. It's like up, down, left, right, and select. The coolest app that you can actually create, I think, it ties all the different screens together. Most of the, I want to say, tech-savvy people who we expect to have a Google TV, they already have a smartphone. A lot of them have a laptop or a tablet or any other device. So if you can create an app that actually ties all this together, or if you have an existing mobile app and you write a TV app, make sure they sync with each other. There's nothing more annoying than having playlists that are already created on my mobile phone, and now I have to do that same thing again on my TV. So, a couple things to keep in mind. A 10-foot UI, so that's what we call, when we talk about developing for a TV, we usually talk about a 10-foot UI. That's about the distance I like you to sit back from. This whole thing with like having your monitor in front of you when you write code, not a good experience, because honestly what we're doing here today, it leads to you using too small fonts. So whatever you do, double your font size. Make it simple, make it visual, and think about that you actually have high quality sound. So a lot of times we use things like tactile feedback on a smartphone when you press something. Use sound on a TV. It's a social device, it's used by multiple people. Nothing more embarrassing than having your tweet, like your direct messages on Twitter, show up when your buddies are over for soccer or football in this country. So think about how you do this, think how you protect privacy. I don't want anybody here getting divorced because they get a PM from somebody that they weren't supposed to get a PM from. And consider how you do multiple accounts. We don't actually support multiple accounts right now in Google TV, so every app has to handle their own account management. So the other thing is UI design. So I've already talked with one UI designer. So we have one. Anybody else who admits to being a UI designer here? 2, awesome. 3, 4, wow, this is awesome. So those are the people you actually want to talk to. People watching television have an incredibly unrealistic expectation on polish, and I blame all those guys in Hollywood. There's people who actually make a freaking living of making it beautiful. There is fonts coming in, like 3D effects, reflections, and all this stuff. People see that, and then they see your app, and your app is like 10-point font Helvetica. Awesome. Looks like a video game from the 80s. So what we recommend is, first of all, have a dark background. People watch television, it's dark outside, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. You don't want to have a white background. It really sort of is disruptive in the living room. Use big fonts, make them bold. It's really, I mean, font size is one of those things. It's very tempting. You have a lot of screen space, you want to fill it, but really try to restrict yourself with how much text you put on the screen. Short lines, people don't like to read across 60 inches, and increase the spacing between your lines. In fact, this is about as much text, and this is about as much as I would recommend put on a screen. This is not a good layout for your app. So, as I said, no touch. Newsflash, but sometimes people forget, a TV is a landscape device. So most telephone apps are developed for portrait mode. It really looks very odd when you have a list view and you scroll through a list view and it runs on a 60-inch device, and it's horrible. Don't do it. Oh, and one other important issue, if you are an Android developer and you're thinking about things like Adobe Air or using Flash in web views, it actually won't work. I'm sorry. Here is, just for you guys who are familiar with Android, just to give you a quick heads up. So this is also on our developer documentation, but the default mode for developing for Google TV is 1080p. So in pixels, that is 1920 by 1080 pixels. As I said, this is a lot of pixels. Don't feel the urge of filling them all. Leave some empties. And for older TVs, we fall back to 720p, so that's a 1280 by 720 resolution. By the way, if you are an Android developer, I also want to point out, if you convert all this with densities and display independent pixels and do all the math, all the magic, you'll figure out that those two are actually identical in display independent pixels in Android. So if you are a good Android citizen and you use the DIPs for doing all your layouts, this is no problem. So you get everything for free here. As I keep saying, don't put too much stuff on your TV screen. This here shows how much information we usually recommend you should put on. Notice that your tablet, even a 10-inch tablet, holds more information than a 40-inch television screen, simply because you sit further away, you're not as close to it. My recommendation is almost, if you have, some people have already a tablet app, some people have a phone app, I would rather start with a phone app, because a landscape phone is about as much stuff as I want to see on a large screen TV. For developers, keep in mind, there is a lot of pixels on that screen. And I say it again because if you have, for example, some people, and I'm not at all looking at my UI designers over there, some people feel this incredible urge to have a beautiful background, and they take a full screen PNG with, like, I don't know, 1980 by 1080 pixels, and then they fill the whole screen. If you do that on a regular phone, it takes you about 1.5 megabytes. On a tablet, it's about 4 megs. On a television, this is 8 megabytes of your memory. So if you have a full screen background, if it's worth it, go spend 8 megabytes, but be aware that it's 8 megabytes. And I've had an app where they wanted to have like a racing flag in the background, and they had a checkered flag, a green flag, a red flag, whatever, and it's like, Jesus, people spend 50 megabytes just in backgrounds. So think about stretching or whatever you can do, or piecing it together. So here's another thing that Yes.
Can you tile background or not?
Yeah, you can tile background. You can use 9 patches, which is really amazing, or you can just stretch it. We'll get to the stretching in a second. It gets worse from here. So, actually, what I want you to do is actually next time you watch television, really pay attention to the way the professionals do it. And with the professionals, I mean all the people who do television content for a living. So, have you ever wondered when you see a TV and you watch stuff and the text, you'll notice, never goes all the way to the edge of the TV screen? There is this really sad concept called an overscan. All the people who know me on stage, they know I keep talking about that stuff, but it's just one of those things. If you look at TV content, you should really not put all your important stuff on the outside of the screen, because you never know if it's all visible. And there's mechanical reasons, there is broadcast reasons, but not all pixels are always visible. So if your UI looks something like this, then in an exaggerated world, people might see something like that. So put stuff in the middle, leave a little bit space. So you can either imagine this as a border, but this is not exactly the way it works. On Google TV, once you set it up tomorrow, you'll notice you set what we call the Overscan Settings. It's those funky little blue bars that you move from the bottom and from the left, from the right. And after this setup, your Android, the pixel 00 will be in the upper left corner. So that's visible. But I told you earlier it's 1920 by 1080. Well, it's 1920 or 1080 minus a few pixels. So your actual Android canvas, your full screen Android canvas, is up to 5% or so smaller. So as a good developer, you should already know that Android does some really amazing stuff for dynamic screen sizes and variable screen sizes. So just make your life so much easier and don't use absolute coordinates, but just use the regular Android stuff that you should use anyways. Basically use relative layouts, use the layout managers, use gravity, and it also gives you another reason to leave more empty space. Don't fill everything. So much for Overscan. The other thing to keep in mind is if you navigate this UI here with a touch screen, no problem. You just touch something and you play back a video and everything's good. You notice here there is selection highlight, there's focus highlight, there's a bunch of highlights on there. You should implement this. And Android, again, the APIs are all known. This is nothing Google TV specific. Those APIs have been around, I think, at least since Froyo. But basically, you can define drawables, and there's different states. And I want you to remember there is selection and focus. And my special friend is the third one. It's actually selected and focused. And a lot of people forget that third state. And then when your selection focus moves over or your focus indicator moves over your selection, and people are confused because they lose the current selection. There's another fun one, grid pattern. So Android has already a focus managing built in. And so if, for example, you have focus on an element in this grid, you press down, what happens? The user expects the focus moves just down there. The computer does not know what the hell all this means, and the focus could just as well move there, because that's the next element down from where you were. Or the focus could move there, because that's the next row down beginning. So wherever you end up, those are 3 completely equal choices for Android. It actually depends on how you define your layout, how you sort of cascade your list views and how you box them into each other. It's basically depends on how you wrote your XML that day. Don't leave it up to chance. What I think a good application should do is you should explicitly declare what is next, focus down, focus left, focus right, and so on. So this is some of the, I mean, I want to say that's like the really polished, that's the last 5% or last 10%, but if you want to have an app that actually really looks amazing, make sure your focus handling works. The other thing is sound, use sound, but default to low volume. Make it appropriate for the living room. Do me a favor, I don't want to see an iFart app on Google TV, seriously. And be aware of sound focus. Another sad anecdote, we've had, when we launched initially, there was a bunch of music players, there was like Pandora music player, and we had actual support calls because people started Pandora, left Pandora, did something else, started watching TV, and then they watched TV and there is music playing in the background, and they could not figure out how to turn off the music in the background. They would actually call Best Buy. They would send the Geek Squad. So please make sure you check for sound focus, and there is Android APIs for that. You have audio focus, state listeners. When somebody leaves your app, make sure at least you decide consciously if you should keep playing or maybe not. Here's another interesting thing. I'm just throwing this one out. If any of you wants to implement a left side navigation bar, so this is sort of an alternative to an action bar. So we're going into more of the Android expertise here. But if you are an Android developer for tablets, you've done anything for Honeycomb or higher, you probably know there is now one of the features is called Action Bar. It's a little thing on top of your app, sort of replaces the old menu bar. And this is really the way you should do all of your options in your apps if you develop for tablet. If you develop for TV, we have what we call a left side navigation bar. It conveniently has the exact same API as an action bar, and it's available for download. So we actually think, we've seen a bunch of apps that use the action bar on top. It doesn't look very good, and it's not very useful with the D-pad. So we think the action bar to the left, what we call left side navigation bar, makes your app more useful. If you want, go to our sample code. You can download the samples. Catch any of us, we can tell you how to get started. I have a talk about this also tomorrow. And we have three choices. We have the one with all the icons, we have the transparent overlay, or we have the solid one. So you can use it differently. Lastly, make your app simple. Actually, I would say if any instructions are required, you're doing it wrong. And one of the other tips from our personal experience is people really don't want to see the application not responding dialog. So do me a favor, don't load any graphics asset on the UI thread. You may get away with it in your own developer network. You probably may get away with it on our network here when there is not 200 people in the room. But you can be pretty sure the first time a user tries this out in their home network, if you do any network access on the UI thread, they will see this dialog. So very, very quickly, just a summary so that you can get started maybe tonight or tomorrow. As Paul pointed out, there is one or two steps that are slightly different hooking up a Google TV box. So all of you have a Logitech review. If you are Android developers, let me just set level here. If you have written an Android app, you know how to use ADB. If you don't know how to use ADB, we can maybe, as Paul said, we can do a little bit of a tutorial tomorrow. But assuming you know how to use ADB, the next question you will have is, how do I plug my review into my laptop? The good news is you don't have to. So the review actually connects over Wi-Fi to your laptop, and you need to tell both sides where the other end is. So you need to configure your Google TV Logitech box. You go to the settings menu, you go to applications, and in applications you select development, since that's what we're about to do the next couple days here. And then in development, you, first of all, you enable remote debugging, and then you can set the debugger IP address. I trust that all of you are developers, you figure out what your IP address on your laptop is, and you enter the IP address of your laptop here. Then the next step is, so you enter your laptop's IP address here. Then you need to figure out what is your Google TV's IP address. Again, system settings. There is something called conveniently network, and then network status. In network status, you can see what is your IP address of your Google TV device. You remember that or you write it down. And then on your development machine, you type ADB connect and then the IP address of your Google TV device. So after those two steps, your Google TV knows about your laptop knows about your Google TV. Here's the bad news. If you have a team of 4 people and 4 people share one Google TV, you can only pair it with one laptop at a time. So I recommend, maybe a bunch of you code, but you copy over to one laptop and then deploy it from there. Or if you really want to, you can keep changing around, but it gets really boring after a while, just typing in IP addresses all the time. All right, so with that, I want to send you guys off and let's get started with the pitches.